So we're both kind of smiling because in my research of yours and following on Instagram, Bryan, you were you the one who jabbed Bryan Johnson during his gene therapy, or was I know you were on the documentary?
Yeah, I was in the documentary explaining a few technical points. I'm not in the business of personally jabbing anybody. That was a medical doctor, but yeah, we were in the documentary.
Nice, nice. I was sharing that I have a like many people, just a crazy curiosity of what he's doing, and I
Yeah,
think that he is probably right that he is probably the most quantified human being on in the history of the earth. Do you think that's fair?
I think he's up there, um, to a degree that's meaningful at a minimum. Yeah, yeah. I mean, whether he's like hard number one in that regard, like there's a lot of people. It's hard to know, but I think this is actually the thing that like people might undervalue the most about Bryan is he puts his data out there. Like he put his protocol out there, he put his data out there, and agree or disagree, you can be like, that's a really good example to set. So I think that's one of his best accomplishments.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And you got to give it to the guy. You know, he has an uncanny ability to grab people's attention, and the numbers that he shares, the blueprint, the whole thing, it really does draw you in. And it seems like he's got a sense of humor too, which is refreshing. Can you
Yeah.
walk us through just for the context? Can you give us an idea of what he was doing at Minicircle?
Yeah. So he was interested, I feel like his longevity routine was really dialed in and he wanted to elevate it to some next level. And so he started looking at gene therapy options. Um, and there was quite a vetting process before he settled on us. Like we were on calls with him with really preeminent experts in the field. He eventually decided to try our gene therapy. So we flew down to an island where one of our partner clinics is, and we just kind of accompanied him while he got the gene therapy.
And what specific gene therapy did he get?
This would be follistatin gene therapy.
I am a complete idiot when it comes to gene therapies, but I know how to read, and so I see follistatin, and then I see clotho gene therapy.
Yeah.
What why is it interesting to people? Why is this something that is relevant to people who are interested in not just longevity but health span?
Yeah, great question. I mean, follistatin and clotho are both just kind of like home runs. Like, so follistatin, uh, you know, the, the likely benefits are improved body composition. So increased fat-free mass, decreased body fat. We have case studies and subjective reports of decreased inflammation that are consistent with the literature, improved subjective well-being, and rejuvenated epigenetic age. So basically, like follistatin's like improved body composition plus some cellular rejuvenation. Clotho, on the other hand, is like improved cognition. So maybe anecdotally, like a 5 to 10 point IQ boost plus cellular rejuvenation. Both are pretty safe. Follistatin's probably a little better safety margin, but like physical performance and cognitive performance plus rejuvenation, that's the idea there.
Did you say subjective mood
Yeah.
or
It's
was
very
subjective well-being?
commonly. Oh yeah. I mean, it's a little harder to quantify, and like we attempted to do a survey with a trial, but very consistent reports of just I feel better, I have more energy. I mean, anytime you have a lot of these things are like feedback loops. Like you look better, you feel better, you function better, and it kind of all feeds back in on itself.
Yeah. So this is the look good, feel good, play good Deion Sanders treatment.
Yeah, I don't know if we can promise prime time level performance, but maybe it's a step in that direction.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. I have I want to kind of contextualize this conversation. And I know you're like, we just met, Sean. I don't know who you are. You told me that you got a podcast and you're here now. The thing that I kind of struggle with a little bit is the line between um, lifestyle optimization and then what we would call biohacking.
Sure. Yeah.
Like what I lean more towards is, photobiomodulation on my nuts while we're talking, photobiomodulation um up my nose,
Yeah.
um herbs, cold
Yeah.
plunges, those sorts of things.
Yes.
And because
Yeah.
because because I think they're accessible,
Yeah.
they're
Yep.
they're less expensive, and I think that before going into elaborate treatments or PRP or stuff like that, I
Yeah.
that's sort of the baseline. So my question for you is, in your opinion, in your vast experience as a biohacker and as a former elite level athlete, like, how do you think about the line between when I can do the lifestyle stuff and then when it's time to go and do uh, the more invasive or the more involved interventions?
That's seriously a great question. First of all, I want to thank you for bringing your A game to the podcast and making sure you're getting the red light on your nuts while we talk.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of infrared and red light myself. But seriously about your question. So I think the best way to think about this is it's like a pyramid. So the base of the pyramid is lifestyle. And you can't build the top of the pyramid as high as you want without a strong base. So like if you skip to the higher levels of the pyramid, like supplements or medications or, biologics like gene therapy, so like you can out party or out eat any drug or advanced therapy. So I think that's how I think of it, is like fill the lower layers. And then once you're maxed out there, you're going to want to level up. And there's a lot of leveled up options these days.
Okay. Okay. Obviously age has an influence. Environmental exposures have an influence, but I hear that, and I've never really thought about it that much, but that's an excellent way to say it. If I'm doing all the things, my diet and my nourishment is dialed and my stress is dialed, my sleep is great, I'm getting tons of hugs, and
Yep.
I'm doing neurofeedback, but there is a there is a ceiling at
Yeah.
which
Oh yeah.
you can't get much better than what you're at, right?
I 100% agree with you. So, and different people, the great thing is everybody's free to choose where their ceiling or their goal is. But, I think there's a really strong argument that like the ceiling that's hardwired into us is not satisfactory for a lot of people. So yeah, you get your sleep, your relationships, your diet, your exercise super dialed in, and maybe you're even cruising there for a year or a few years, and you want more. So you want to look into advanced therapies. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the higher up the pyramid you go, there can be more risk. So, you want to be really well informed and careful. But yeah, I think there's a lot of great options today that reach really high if you do things the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think about some of the more well-known, biohacker types, and I look at some of the things that they've done. Ben Greenfield jumps to the top of that list because he's doing all the things. The base of his pyramid is
Yes.
super wide, right? The
Yeah.
nutrition, the sleep, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But he's also, made waves, injecting his dick 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
wrote all about it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
so
No, I think it's great. I just want to celebrate people who are highly experimental, who are also open about it. It's a much different paradigm than like academic science or the private sector, but like if people are willing to take risks and like we learn from that too. So shout out Ben Greenfield. I do think he does a lot of awesome stuff.
I guess it's like, what's the motivation for most people to engage with Minicircle and say, oh, okay, well, either I've got lots of resources, and I do want to be able to cut, uh I want to do maybe a fewer lifestyle things. I'm 55 and I want to invest in something that's going to give me a giant boost in a very short period of time, and I have the means to do that. Um, what is typically the motivation or sort of archetype of people that choose to work with you?
Yeah, I think there's it's a kind of refreshingly diverse group of people, all ages, all different, both sexes, all different kinds of people. Obviously the therapy is pricey, it's $25,000. That's still about tenfold cheaper than previous commercially available gene therapies. So we do see a tilt towards high net worth individuals. And but we also just see a lot of people who are into biohacking and longevity, who are looking to, you know, level up or explore cutting edge options.
How much data collection do you do directly before, directly after, and or 6 months after? Are you doing like in body and blood work and all sorts of other, cognitive tests and stuff like that to see how it's going?
Yeah, so for trials that we run, yes, we do extensive testing both before and then right at baseline and after, and it's a battery of tests that includes blood work, body composition. In the case of our trial, we did DEXA scans. We do epigenetic testing. We really try to cast a wide net. When people buy our therapy from a partner clinic, we're not directly involved with that person, so we don't really like require them to get data, but we always encourage data collection. I mean, it's super valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that at the very least you'd want to do a DEXA or in body and blood work,
Yeah.
to kind of see what happened. You know,
Yes.
um, because otherwise, what the hell are you doing if you don't know how it worked? If you don't know how it worked for you, like then maybe there's the subjective measures, like, well, I feel stronger, I feel
Yeah.
happier.
Yeah. I mean, subjective measures are important, but body composition is a classic example of like a lot of things can influence the way your abs look in the mirror, whether, hydration status, lighting, any number of things. If you go get a DEXA or an in-body or anything of a high quality, then you're going to have numbers. And there was one person in the trial. She was a very fit person. She's about 55 years old. And she got her body composition tested regularly and saw a lifetime PR in low body fat percentage, which at 55 with decades of fitness experience, that's really significant. And that might not have been captured if she had just been eyeballing it.
Yeah, right. How many times have you done it?
I'd say, um, I think probably neighborhood of 3 times at this point, like fewer than 5, more than 2. Yep.
Is that the follistatin and the clotho gene therapy?
No, Clotho is still in development. It's really moving. It's really in development, but follistatin is the more tested gene therapy that we have available right now.
Okay. Since I got you in the hot seat, what
Yeah.
what what are your personal goals? Like, why? I mean, obviously you're 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 at the cutting edge of this. Reading your accolades, DARPA, Air Force, UW Medicine, NFL. I'm like, fuck, this guy is Captain America, and so you're at the tip of the spear of some of this stuff. Like, what are you interested in? What are you trying to do?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think the way I frame this for myself really is I collect a lot of data on myself, and I try to make it no algorithm or anything, just like an informal scorecard of myself in different categories, to identify weaknesses. So for example, like my physical fitness, I'm not going to win the CrossFit games, but like I'm physically fit. I don't need to keep reinvesting in like marginal gains there. There's some other categories like probably my sleep hygiene and maybe like, my detoxification systems, liver and kidneys. Those things are, if I'm scoring these things out of 10, my fitness is probably a 9.5 or a 10. And some other stuff is probably like a 7 or an 8. Uh, so I focus on those things. I think the thing that's always at a premium for me is cognitive performance. Cause I'm like a professional brain athlete now. So that's really Yeah, I'd say cognitive performance and just uh, metabolic hacking is kind of irresistible to me. Like, so that those are the two things I really dig into and try to make like hyper advanced moves in, to varying degrees of success. But yeah, those are my targets.
Well, why you're obviously lean currently? Like, why metabolic effects? Just to stay lean?
No, no, not just for leanness. So metabolism is okay. So I'm gonna so the project I worked on for DARPA was called biostasis. It was really like drug induced human hibernation. All that is controlled metabolic depression. So when we sleep, we go down to like 85% of our normal metabolism. Hibernating animals go down to like 10 to 50%. There's so many ways to hack metabolism that go beyond body composition. The commercial availability of ketone esters recently is a great example. There's probably other points in just basic carbon metabolism that we can hack into. Um, so yeah, I'm always looking at that, trying to create basically um, a higher yield, cleaner burning energy system throughout my body. Um, and then I think there's some really cool overlap between mitochondrial energy, consciousness, maybe bioelectricity, and that's just like the most irresistible corner for me to try and do cool stuff in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So then I want to dig a little deeper I'm curious about the same sorts of things, and
Really?
I did say lean mass, but I also know the metabolism is also associated with some cancers and some longevities and issues. So is that what it's about? Are you one of those, I want to live to 180 kind of guys too?
Yeah, yeah. No, I want to. The word I like to use is indefinitely. I would prefer not to have any limits imposed on my lifespan. Like the option to die is always there. Currently, the option to live is not. I think things like creativity, love, exploration are inexhaustible, and like we haven't even really gone to space yet. Like there's a lot. So yeah, I 180. I would welcome 180. I would welcome beyond 180. So yeah, I want to go as far as possible. Yes.
Cool. All right. That's I think that's an important question to ask because that I think that gives me an understanding of kind of where you're at and where your motivations lie. And so to
Yeah.
be at the cutting edge and saying, yeah, I mean, I want to look I want to look like this when I'm 80 or when I'm 90 or when I'm 150 is really fucking fascinating.
Yeah. No, I think people should dream people should dream big and be super, super ambitious. Like we're in the infancy of our molecular biology knowledge and things are progressing really fast. Speaking as a scientist, AI is a massive game changer these days. Like I am personally learning stuff probably 10 times faster than previously. And I don't really think there are hardwired principles in nature that tell us like, no, you cannot do that. So yeah, I mean, none of this stuff exists in a vacuum. So as a person with like, I have responsibilities to Minicircle, to the public, like, so, it's important for me to stay grounded, um, and, but also reach for the stars. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the world needs people like you, like Bryan Johnson, like Aubrey de Grey, because that the audacity to 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 believe and to be working and not just I mean and obviously there's those are two very Aubrey de Grey doesn't look young. He's the longevity guy and he looks really old,
Um,
right? And,
uh,
and I want
yeah. I mean,
you
Aubrey is
go.
a character. Like he is awesome. I think he definitely looks cool. He does not look like if you looked up youthfulness in the encyclopedia, you wouldn't see like Aubrey's face necessarily. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of people getting after this, for sure. Yep.
Did you see the interview with between Bryan Johnson and Derek from More Plates, More Dates?
No, I have not seen that, but I should. That sounds really good.
It's really good. And I saw
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
a couple of clips.
Cool. You know, I wanted to chime in with one more thing. If you look like 100 years ago, uh, when we were trying to fly as humans, like build airplanes, people were like adamant that this would never happen. It was impossible for so many reasons, and they were completely wrong. So I think historically this has happened over and over. People say that's impossible, like you're whatever, and then it kind of happens, and then people are like, yeah, of course, that's natural. So whatever the field is or the breakthrough we're looking at, I encourage people to be open-minded and not, you know, responsible levels of criticism are important. But to say stuff is like dream big, we've come a long way. We can go a lot further. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll just pause for just a quick second. It is pretty choppy.
Mhm. Let me
I
make
don't
sure
know
my,
if there's another cell phone in your office. Um,
you know what, I
Again, this might
apologize.
hammer out on the back end.
I had my Wi-Fi off and was using my cell signal because I in my apartment sometimes that works better. I just put the Wi-Fi on. Hopefully that'll fix it. Let me know.
Yeah, yeah, I think that'll probably be better. Yeah, there was a little gap there. It'll help the
Sorry about
delay
that.
too. Yeah, the you I obviously you know who Derek More Plates More Dates is.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And so he's talking with Bryan and saying like, hey, you're doing all these things, which is really amazing and super fascinating. And thank you for being open and sharing, how long you're getting erections at night, like really fascinating stuff. Thanks, man.
yeah,
And then,
yeah,
and then he's like, but have you seen this guy in
yeah,
Japan who's
yeah.
58 and yoked and doesn't do any of this shit? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, I think there's valid central criticism of Brian. And I think a lot of people will land on different personal routines. I do tend to think that like being yoked at 58 is, for most people, is going to require some attention to detail and like biohacking like approaches. Um, but it doesn't have to be Brian's exact approach. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, if you hate Brian's approach, put your approach out there and back it up with your numbers. That's like instead of just teeing off on Brian in the comments section, like show a better system is really what I encourage
Yeah.
people to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what are you doing, Patty? Like, let's see your testosterone armchair Monday morning quarterbacks everywhere, right?
I yes, strongly agree. It is a lot harder to do this stuff and be open about it than it is to criticize without putting yourself out there. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to run something by you. Are you familiar with dry fasting?
I've heard this term and I've wondered what it means. So I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it. What would you tell me?
So we held a cohort group. We're
Okay.
calling it dry fasting with friends.
Cool.
I did a 5-day last summer, and my partner and co-founder in this group did a 7-day 3 months ago.
Okay.
The background on this is Russian researchers who don't have labs and beakers, noticing what happens when you fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have the references to ancient peoples and
Yeah.
Ramadan and John the Baptist and walkabouts, and we understand that not just insane extreme autophagy, but intracellular cleanup and also DNA repair, um, gut repair, um, just 1,000 other things that happens. The senescent cells get kicked out. Well, I did blood work before and after,
Nice.
uh, 17 markers the day before, and then I did the same 17 markers. There was a company called Siphox, Siphox, that I did work with. My testosterone jumped up almost 200 points in 2 days, which is cool. I mean, it could also have been how I slept the night before, or, obviously it's a snapshot, but 200
Yeah.
points in 5 days, pretty fucking nuts.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wanted to bring it up and I wanted to throw it out there, because I really like talking about it.
Yeah.
And for, I know you got a question. What is it?
Yeah. So it basically means fasting, but you also don't drink water. Is that accurate?
Right.
So how do you go 5 days or 7 days without water? The rule of thumb I always heard was like 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water. Tell me what happens at 3 days without water? How do you manage any risks? Like what can you share about your experience?
Yeah. So the longest dry fast was 28 days.
Holy cow,
This was
seriously?
yeah, there's clinics all over. There's a clinic, I think there's one in Montenegro, Mongolia. Dr. Filanov, who has written the most research on this, Sergei Filanov, still alive, still posting on Instagram and hosting retreats where people will come and do. Typically, they're 7-day dry fast. You can go all the way up to 11 in a clinical setting at a retreat where they're also, monitoring you. They suggest that you don't exceed 7 days unless you're in a clinic being observed under observation.
Sure.
So you pee the whole time because you're literally shredding body fat and pissing it out, and they're using it. You go into deep ketosis, on day 3-ish for most people. It's actually, because I've done probably a dozen or so water only fasts, multi-day water only fasts, 3-day, 5-day. The longest water only fast I'd done years ago was a 7-day. I got headache. I got stomach aches. I felt lethargic and brain foggy. I'm chugging Topo Chico and taking amino acids and, black coffee and doing that whole thing. I've also done the 5-day fasting mimicking diet from, forget those guys' names.
Walter Longo is one of the people involved. Yeah. A lot of us in the Cable Line Lab tried the fasting mimicking diet after Walter came and gave a seminar, and people were going, so I've also tried that one. Yeah.
3 olives for lunch.
So more or less. Yeah. I was eating a lot of like spinach and like seeds.
Yeah. So your body goes into a deep ketosis and autophagy, and again, this is all based on Russian literature that was like then translated to Italian and then English. The August Dunning has been doing this for a long time. He wrote the book, The Phoenix Protocol, which is essential reading if this is something you're interested in. And he talks about, intracellular cleanup, metabolic water, sustains you essentially. The water fasts that I did, I would, they were terrible. I mean, I was miserable, and I was, chugging. And what he purports, going back to Filanov and Shenikov, is you're still turning on your digestive system, which is then activating your organs, right?
Interesting. Okay.
So even like a little bit of water that goes in your mouth creates saliva, which then activates the digestive system, which then turns on your organs to say, oh, okay, we got shit to do.
Yeah.
When you don't drink anything, your organs get an actual chance to reset and not be taxed. And there is a distinction between what's called a hard dry fast, which is you can't even touch water. And it's better to be in arid climate. And what I did, which is a soft dry fast. So I was still doing cold plunges. I went in the ocean a couple of times. I took showers with my mouth taped so I didn't get any water in my mouth. A lot of my blood markers went from low optimal to optimal. Yeah. Again, that testosterone 200 point boost. I lost 18 pounds and put on 10 in water. which apparently 10 is the maximum water weight that any person can lose. But my physique like totally changed and has stayed different. The most interesting shit, this is where it gets really good, is I did enemas on day 4 and 5.
Okay. Yeah.
And came up with 120 miniature little gallstones that have probably been in there for 20 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Parasites of 7 different species that I'm actually seeing that are stayed, that kept that heavy metal sequester, that they did their role, kept it, killed them, excreted those so that it didn't release all those heavy metals that they were munching on when they were inside my body.
Okay.
Here's the other one. And again, this is just because I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah.
I captured my urine on day 5 and then froze it and then thawed it. And so did everyone else in this cohort group that we did recently. We just finished maybe 3 weeks ago. You should see some of the, I'm just going to show you. I'm just going to show you.
Show me.
You did not expect to be doing this now today, did you?
But I love it. Like you're doing experimental stuff. You're collecting data. You're not giving into the ick factor, which way too many people are like just, oh, blood transfusions, ick. Or like, this is cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of our gals is vaccine injured, Australian. And it was super obvious because she's like, I was fucking crushing it. And 2 days after my first one, I was out. Autoimmune disease, flare-ups, arthritis, distended belly, all this stuff. So this is the urine that she captured on.
Okay.
So we're suspecting that the green is graphene oxide.
Okay.
All of that silt at the bottom is either heavy metals or senescent cells. This is her urine.
Yeah, I mean it's striking in appearance. I'm not a medical doctor, but it's certainly an interesting data point. Yeah, I mean, it's cool that y'all capture data. I mean, so a couple of comments on dry fasting. Like, one, I don't know the literature. 2, speaking as somebody who I have done like a lot of kind of crazy biohacking and occasionally paid the price for it, doing like unsupervised, like it's gotten kind of dicey if you just like, everyone should be super careful. And the more out there stuff you're doing, the more careful you should be. Collecting data is always a great way to both learn and reduce risk. My impression with Russia is there is like a body of literature and pharmacology at a minimum that is kind of completely parallel to what we have. It's not, so in other words, there's like stuff from that science that is just completely a different track than what we had. So it's interesting. The other thing is that like, just kind of generally in Earth life history, like life has had billions of years to evolve genetically encoded protective programs against temporary deprivation of fundamental life inputs. So whether that's calories or oxygen, like if you go to altitude training, or even a cold plunge is like temperature fasting. And so water is super important. I mean, I think there's, again, I don't know the literature, but there is, it's interesting that it's not discussed much. Like, in other words, I don't know the ins and outs of water fasting, but it's plausible in terms of principles that there would be protective programs that would kick in response to the deprivation of this super critical life input. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I got such a kick out of it. The other thing, here's the other big payoff, and then we can, I'll get off my soapbox. I just figured I was in good company, and so I might as well share it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's awesome.
The other thing that is purported to happen is a stem cell release. So on day 4 and 5, you get a first wave of stem cells from your femurs. And if you get to day 6 or 7, you get another full wave, a complete stem cell, the pluripotent stem cell release from your femurs on those days. And I actually felt it on the mid morning of day 4. I went from like, I can't believe I have 2 more days left to like, woo. And then walked downstairs and started folding laundry. And my wife's like, what are you doing? Slow down there, buddy. You haven't anything to eat or drink in fucking 4 days.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't know. I just feel this boost of energy. I feel really good. Like I feel limber and flexible. And she's like, don't, just slow down, chill out. But I don't know. But you can kind of see like how I think about what are the things that I can do to make that base of that pyramid as wide as possible on the free, on the lifestyle, on the, but cold plunges aren't fun. Starving yourself's not fun. Like these things are challenging, right?
I would say they're challenging and fun. Some of the feelings I've had, bodily sensations, cognitive states, deeper and fast, are some of the most mysterious and like high energy states I've entered. It's challenging enough to go there that I don't know them inside and out, but like I've felt some weird, cool stuff in my body beyond like the 3-day mark of a fast. It's super interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'll put you down for the next one we're gonna do, which is March 27th to April 1st.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I already wrote it down, so I'm gonna try and look it up when we get off here.
Yeah. What other sorts of things are complementary to gene therapy? When you think about, if someone wants to get the most out of this and they're fascinated, and I imagine over time this is going to get more and more expensive, and it's going to get less and less expensive, and more accessible. Like how can people start thinking about how they might want to consider this or plan for this or optimize this if they're ready now?
Yeah, I mean, I think a few things. One, collecting data as extensively on yourself as possible is like, I would say that's underneath the base of the pyramid, is just like data collection, and it flows up and informs everything. So, and I really like your point that a lot of the best stuff is free or very inexpensive. This is not just for billionaires generally. Like a lot of biohacking is free or inexpensive. A lot of blood work is pretty cheap. DEXAs are not super expensive. So I would say get data, reasonably optimize your lifestyle. Like, are you doing cardio and strength work? Are you eating some version of a really solid diet? Are your relationships dialed in? Are you sleeping? Have you eliminated your super bad habits? So do all that stuff, collect data on yourself, and have a foundation going in, and then read, like use, whether you're using an AI, ChatGPT or something, or PubMed, Google, read and get informed about the cutting edge stuff, whether it's gene therapy, blood related therapy like plasmapheresis or any number of things. Stem cells are also, I feel like, as much of a buzzword as they are, I feel like they're still under leveraged as a therapy. So yeah, those would be the 3 big things I would suggest for people. And maybe save your money. Like, I feel like there's people spend money on a lot of stuff, and I feel like investing in your health is one of the best investments you can make. So like,
Absolutely.
saving up for cool health stuff is maybe fun and a good idea.
Yeah. I think that there is a movement that direction. I've been in the biohacking world for a long, long time, and I remember when intermittent fasting was first like, what? You're gonna skip breakfast? What are you, crazy?
Yeah.
You're gonna eat
Yeah.
once a day? Come
Yeah.
on, man, that's not healthy. And now it's
if you're not doing it, it's why aren't you doing it? Yeah.
And so these sorts of and PRP, it just so happens that my doctor, my pediatrician as a kid, was a high level athlete in middle school and high school, played college, And my doctor, Dr. Mark Wagner at the Sports Medicine Clinic in Seattle, in Ballard, I remember when he first started doing stem cells, and I was like, yeah, of course, he's working with all these pros. Of course he should be doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm beginning to wonder and think about whether or not gene therapy, and specifically the two types that you offer, are going to be that way in 5 years and 10 years, where it's, yeah, of course you do it. You hear ads on the radio or whatever.
I mean, here's the thing. So I would argue that they should be like, gene therapy absolutely in a best timeline follows that trajectory. Like it should be accessible. It should be more mainstream. That's really a big part of our mission at Minicircle, is to make it accessible and safe. And here's why: because genetics is like the base layer of biology. That's the code that makes you uniquely you. And if there's an error or a suboptimal element in the code, anything you do on top of that is just like a patch. If you have the ability to tinker with the code itself, that's the base layer of tinkering. I would also argue that like it's a miracle that human biology works at all when you stop and think about how many cells we have, how complicated it is. But there's also everybody has imperfections. So yeah, I sincerely hope that, our mission at Minicircle to make this accessible, affordable, safe, becomes a reality. We're working really hard to do that. Yeah.
Now that we're 41 minutes into this conversation, it's probably appropriate for me to ask how it works. Like, what?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
how does it work?
Yeah. Great question. So, Minicircle gene therapy, we use minimal plasmids. So there's no virus involved. A common misconception is that there's some bacteria involved. There's no bacteria. There's just DNA, a small circle of DNA, a few thousand base pairs. And what we do is this: we inject it into belly fat along with a cationic polymer, which is just a positively charged chemical that helps the DNA get into your cells. And currently, so follistatin and klotho are both proteins that whatever cell they're made in, they're exported out of the cell naturally into circulation. So basically what we're doing is we're just injecting DNA into some belly fat cells and setting up a little export factory for these, very well-studied beneficial proteins, follistatin and klotho. So yeah, we make a little export factory in your belly fat, sends it into circulation, and you get system-wide benefits.
Where does that DNA that's being injected come from?
Yeah, great question. So we design it on a computer, and then we outsource the manufacturing of it. Like we're not physically assembling it in our lab. But the sequences in the computer file are just derived from, literature and databases. So for example, the follistatin sequence is just the normal human follistatin gene. We haven't altered it. So we're really giving you more copies of the follistatin gene that's already in all your cells. Yeah.
I'm about to ask a question that I might edit out because
Yes.
I'm a conspiracy theorist. So
Yeah. No, go for it. Yeah.
I'm giving you fair warning that I could potentially leave this out, but I am curious.
Yeah.
And I've been reading and following Dr. Jack Cruz for long enough, and MK Ultra and SV40.
Well, what did you say after MK Ultra? What did you say after MK Ultra?
SV40, simian virus 40, the sort of building blocks for many of the vaccines that we get.
Got it.
So my question is, what is my body taking in? That's obviously, it's not mine. So I'm taking in something that's on a matrix of some sort of physical nature. I know I'm getting the code, but what is the actual material that I'm taking in that's then dispersed through my whole body?
That's a great question. So you're taking in a circular loop of DNA. It's maybe like 5 to 10,000 base pairs of DNA in a circle. So that's going into your belly fat cells. And most of it kind of gets like degraded before it reaches the nucleus. Some small percentage of it reaches the nuclei of your belly fat cells, where it takes up residence next to your chromosomes. Now, as far as what is in that DNA other than the follistatin gene, there's like a promoter, which is like the little landing pad before the gene that turns it on. There's like a terminator. And then there's some other elements that are necessary for plasmid production. There's a sizable body of literature on maximizing effectiveness and safety with these kind of plasmids. So, that's a medium depth answer to what you're getting in your body. I would say really important to note that there's no viruses or bacteria going into your body. And whether the thing that's really going to all your cells, or really more accurately into circulation, is the gene product, which is just follistatin, which you already make. The DNA itself should almost entirely stay in those belly fat cells. It's not like IVing a viral gene therapy that goes to all your tissues. So that's one of the safety advantages of our gene therapy, is it's applied locally, but you still get systemic benefits.
Interesting. So what about like adjuvants, to preservatives or anything like that? Anything like that?
There's the cationic polymer that helps the DNA get into cells, because like the membrane of a cell is negatively charged, and so is DNA. So if just raw DNA hits the membrane, it's not going to go in. So we basically wrap the DNA in a positively charged chemical. I'm not, that could qualify as an adjuvant, but that would be the only adjuvant as far as I know. And the toxicity of that is pretty well characterized, and we take a number of steps to hard minimize any toxicity. We even monitor for local inflammation at the site of injection, which we essentially either don't see or see really minimal amounts. So yeah, that's what I would say. It's not like a massive cocktail of weird adjuvants, just DNA, positively charged chemical to get the DNA in the cell. That's what you get.
Fascinating. I love being I love being ignorant. I don't love being ignorant. I love being surprised. No, I do. I love being surprised and just having like coconut blown open by, I know so little about this stuff, and that's a good feeling.
I think if most scientists are being honest, they are in the same boat. So like we have specialized knowledge to a degree, but biology is very complex. We're all striving as scientists to be specialists with deep knowledge, but like being humble is important. Getting your mind blown should be a regular occurrence if you have the right attitude.
Right. What are some of the more inspiring or memorable? You told us about the 55-year-old smoke show who got even better. But what other what other stories jump out at you?
Yeah, I think probably the story that jumps out the most is we had a guy who's, I think he's early 80s, like 80, 81 years old. And he's a pretty dedicated longevity biohacker, smart guy. And, he was struggling with pretty serious osteoporosis, especially in his lumbar spine. And just also a decline in function that a lot of people experience with aging. So he sent us wearable data. He was going for walks daily and was having to stop and rest during walks, like maybe every 5 minutes. We saw in this individual case pretty rapid improvement, like on the scale of months, to that osteoporosis. And he sent us wearable data where he had actually started jogging on his daily walks. So that was like, and then to speak to the subjective well-being point that we discussed earlier, he loves to dance. Him and his wife dance, and he was able to dance more again. So that was like a really good combination of, a dedicated biohacker who's just suffering the effects of aging, who saw both, you know, quantitative and subjective improvements shortly after the therapy.
Hmm. That's cool. That's really cool. What else? What other cool stories jump out at you?
Full stories. I think, let me think. I'm trying to think. I can speak to my experience. So I'm younger, like I'm 42 right now. Former athlete. So like pretty high level of fitness. I have perceived a lot of benefits, from the therapy. For me, it's like definitely feel more energy. I find it a lot easier to keep muscle and strength on, like fewer sets per week. I find it a lot easier to stay leaner, like especially around my midsection. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people have had similar experiences to that. We're also looking at some potential applications to forms of muscular dystrophy, which can really be severe. And So there's a really broad spectrum of benefits that we've seen both on average and in individual case studies.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting too. Uh, you're the right guy to ask this. Um, it's a two-parter. What is your biological age, and what do you think is the best marker for that? Is that telomeres? Is it glycan age? Like, yeah.
Great question. I'm really glad you asked this. So the best biological age score I've gotten was from glycan age. I got 27. I,
Oh,
yeah, I was happy about that one.
damn.
I think my Dunedin pace has never been exceptional. My best Dunedin pace was like 0.88. I actually suspect that I was taking niacin regularly, and based on Michael Lustgarten's N of one experiment, I suspect niacin may have been negative, but my intrinsic and extrinsic epigenetic ages from True Diagnostic were quite low, like maybe also in the late 20s, 30 range. As to what is the best marker, I really think, uh, like I don't think there's one number. So I have one number that I create for myself. I score 10 categories for myself, like, epigenetics, body composition, cardiorespiratory, glucometabolic, immunoinflammatory, etc., even social and financial stuff. And I just
Grip
give
strength?
myself,
You need grip
grip
strength?
strength grip strength would fall under strength. I use other strength metrics. But yeah, grip strength is a good one for sure. Um, uh, for me, my grip strength, my strength is good. Like I'm strong. But I give myself 10 points, maximum score of 10 in each of these 10 categories, and then I just add them up to get a score out of 100. Because I think like these epigenetic clocks are incredible cutting edge tools, but there's a lot of other things that you want optimized. And I don't think any one score currently captures all of them. So I really advocate that people like actually aggressively try to measure what you suspect you're weakest in. And then whether informally or formally, like I'm not a big data algorithm guy, but just aggregate them into some score and be honest about where your weaknesses are. Um, that's what I would advocate for, how to score aging at this point.
Okay. I like that. When and one thing that you said earlier, that you're probably gonna want to later in your life you're gonna wish that you started tracking your blood earlier.
Oh my
You
gosh.
know,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you know, a little folder on your computer that has your blood work, uh, so that you can see trends over 10 years. In fact, now I've got to go see if I can go. As you can imagine, in the role that I'm in, having done this for as long as I have now at 511 episodes, dropping these references about glycan age and whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, I've I've talked to so many amazing people, and they also send me like, hey, let's give me your blood. And I'm like, shit. All right, cool. So I've done,
Yeah.
I don't know, a dozen free blood tests over the years. And,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what's the green? I can't remember the company. Um, it'll come to me. Um, I think that you're gonna want to know and have decades of blood work data to see trends, not just to inform the next interventions or changes that you can make, but just so that you have that data to be able to inform um, tendencies and trends over your life. Like,
Yeah.
and it is such a, so I recorded yesterday with Shalin Shah, who runs a company called, or he's from Marius Pharma, and his oral testosterone company, Kaisertrex. It's like amazing. And so he wants to, he started a nonprofit that's like putting testosterone measurement and quantification like at the forefront where it should be,
Yes.
to allow people to be able to test that, which I know you and I would both agree with. But
Yes.
it's not, it's more than it's more accessible than people think. But if you go to
Yep.
your doctor, they're not going to pull it for you.
Yeah. Like I'm, you know, an expert pretty in a number of important ways. And I feel like I have a second job of just scraping and clawing to like acquire data, get access to stuff. Depending on where you live, et cetera, like it's not as easy as it should be. And too much stuff is stigmatized, or there's like, what would you say, middlemen or something you have to go through. Like data collection should be easy. It should be encouraged. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anybody who's pushing that, and hormone optimization, like don't get me started. Historically very stigmatized topic, but like it's about quality of life. It's not about like, crazy roided up insanity. It's about functioning your best.
For sure. I totally, I've done not a 180 necessarily. I've probably done a 155 rotation on my opinion on TRT after
Yeah.
talking with him yesterday. Cause I want to
Nice.
push that out as far as I fucking can. Like I'm 41.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally.
I want to wait as long as I possibly, and I'm willing to do all sorts of fucking crazy stuff, like freeze my ass off in an ice barrel. I'm in Seattle. Ice barrel is like 35 right now, and I'm going in
Yeah.
right after. I'll starve myself for 5 days and not do any food or water because in hopes that that's going to give me a, stem cell boost. So I
Yeah.
want to delay that as long as I can.
Yeah.
But he's like, it's a couple $100 a month. I'm like, it is? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, and you don't have to inject the oral delivery that we have with Kaisertrex now. Doesn't mean that you have to take a whole mountain of tea in an injection.
Right.
And then rage and then drop. It's going to match your circadian rhythm. And I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck, this sounds pretty good now.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of good options, and it like the way I view it, and studying aging formally really changed my perspective around this, is like the trajectory of like human wellness over the course of a lifespan is not at all necessarily aligned with our personal goals. Like nature is kind of like, let's get you to 25 so you can reproduce and then die slowly now. And once you hit a certain age, it's like, okay, die faster. And like,
Yeah.
Testosterone growth, a lot of things decrease. And a lot of those things are double-edged swords, but like if somebody wants to age naturally, I respect their right to do so. I think your approach of like waiting and trying to adopt is really wise and careful, but like at some point, nature's intention is not to take care of you anymore. And so, you got to take charge yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had my babies. I'm starting to go gray. That's just the way that it goes. But my hair, usually have a buzz cut. My hair got thicker after the dry fast. My
Nice.
hair would probably be thicker and my muscles would be firmer if I came to see you and did some, did healing therapy. Like, look good, feel good, play good.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
what do the haters say
About what?
about gene therapy or
Oh yeah.
about Minicircle?
Yeah. I mean, they say a lot of things. Anything about this is for the rich, that comes up a lot. Which is actually, and they hear the $25,000 price tag, and that can, in their minds, be consistent with that. But, like I mentioned earlier, this is a tenfold price reduction over previous commercially available gene therapies. Like, we can't give it away for free. There were years of R&D and investors that went into this. So it's not just for the rich. Biohacking is not just for the rich. Many of the best things are free or low cost. Our mission is to bring the price of this down even further, make it more accessible. So that's one big thing that the haters say. Other things that the haters say, there's a lot. I mean, I think some people extend their personal preference to age, let's say, naturally, and feel like that should be imposed on everyone, that this is somehow an unnatural undertaking. This actually gets under my skin quite a bit more because I respect people's right to live the way they want. I feel like everyone should have that right, and if you want to try to live longer and better health, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people will criticize the science, but like we're diligent, we're serious. So that those are some of the criticisms for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, again, Monday morning quarterbacks, get getting mad at Bryan Johnson for,
Yeah.
quantification.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to ask, and I used to ask this question before every episode. Is the first question I asked every guest, but I got away from it just because you got to try to keep it fresh.
Sure. Sure.
Since our conversation has started, I've seen you take two or three different things, and I got to know what they are.
It's I buy those nicotine lozenges that are intended for quitting smoking, and
Yeah.
I broke it into four pieces, so I'm not getting I've taken a quarter at a time. So nicotine lozenges I use maybe once a day or a few times a week. Like if I'm on a call or I need to be like kind of sharp and detail oriented, I use nicotine lozenges. The literature, nicotine has a huge effect size in terms of cognitive enhancement. Yeah, exactly. It's just the delivery method. Like, smoking is not the only way to deliver nicotine. It's a molecule. It's not the same as a cigarette. So yeah, it's nicotine
Yeah.
lozenges. Yeah.
Okay. And I took this as well. This is
There we go.
paraxanthin focus bites
Oh,
from.
super cool. Yeah, yeah.
You ever experimented with paraxanthin?
I'm on a big carotenoid and astaxanthin kick recently. I don't know paraxanthin. Is paraxanthin a carotenoid or is it a caffeine analog?
It's a
It's a
caffeine analog.
caffeine. Okay, yeah. So I think I may have experimented with it recently. I think somebody gave me a drink with paraxanthin. Caffeine analogs, don't get me started. Like, this is massively underexplored area. Like, I'm gonna so caffeine acts on adenosine receptors. Adenosine is like one of the most underappreciated molecules in biology. And there's a bunch of molecules that are similar to caffeine, but not caffeine, that are just like obscure, like super cool world of options there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I've had my coffee. It's 12:40 where I am. I've had my coffee this morning, and this is uh for what it's worth. Natural Stacks, based here in Seattle, make the cleanest, strongest shit. They have a dopamine brain food, serotonin brain food, GABA, acetylcholine brain foods. They're really
Nice.
strong. They work really well. They're not like crazy habit forming. They're formulated to be taken every day. And they just came out with these focus bites. It's 14 micrograms of B12, 100 milligrams of Efinity paraxanthin, and that's it. And this stuff is really great.
I
Sharp.
believe. Yeah.
I love it.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Well, as we take this thing home, we've reached that hour mark. Um. Yeah, I feel like we could hang out all day and dork out about different biohacking stuff. Maybe, if you're up for it, maybe I'll have you come back in and we can just shoot this shit again and take it in all sorts of different directions.
Yeah, definitely enjoying this conversation, for sure. Yeah.
Are you did you ever float in a float tank when you were in Seattle?
Not in Seattle. I did that. I started doing that once I got to Austin. I've done it like a handful of times. Super cool concept, but I've only done it a little bit. Yeah.
You look, and maybe it's just because I knew you were in Seattle for 14 years and we're the same age, but you look kind of familiar, and I don't I'm sure we've never met before, but that was my Hail Mary to see if we've crossed paths. I opened a float tank center in Seattle in 2012.
Super cool.
And I thought maybe the name in the face. Okay, I'll let that one go. Um, where where can people go? What do they need to know? If they're interested in learning more? Where should they go on the internet?
Totally. Yeah. We have an internet presence, minicircle.io is our main website. And then minicircle.clinic is our clinic website. And we're on Instagram and X at Minicircle DNA. And we're on LinkedIn at Minicircle. So you can check us out at any of those places. Reach out to us. Yeah.
So Minicircle is the clinic based in Austin?
No, our we partner with international clinics, but our company is based in Austin. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I learned a whole bunch, and I okay, I do have to get this on my chest. I
Yeah.
you're just I thank you for being patient with me, man. You could have told me
No,
to
man.
fuck off a long time ago.
No, dude, this is great.
The gene therapy,
Yeah.
I think, now has a negative connotation.
Really? Okay.
The Yeah, I mean, the COVID shots weren't
Yeah.
vaccines; they were
Yeah.
gene therapies. They were right.
But at least one of them was in like a classic sense, I think. I'm going to be, but yeah, let's, for the purpose of discussion, sure.
Because I think for skeptic tinfoil
Yeah.
hat guys like myself who are also
Yeah. Yeah.
biohackers, I think
Yeah.
it's important that I ask this question and clear the air a little bit, because when I hear, it wasn't a vaccine, it wasn't. Now I gotta fucking edit this now because that's definitely gonna get me kicked off YouTube. Uh, I'll remember.
Okay.
Experimental mRNA gene therapy is what it
Yeah.
actually was, right?
I think the bulk of it was mRNA vaccine. I think the Johnson & Johnson one was like a classic gene therapy, but I think Moderna and Pfizer were mRNA therapies. Full disclosure, I am not a deep expert on the COVID vaccines, but this is my working impression of what they were. Yeah.
Right. So if people like myself who have done PRP and exosomes and have done injectables before to
Sure.
heal or to whatever, but they hear gene therapy and they're
Yeah.
dummies like me, and they're like, "Oh, it must be like this." Can you maybe like clear that up if you as best you can?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is not a comment on how the COVID vaccine was formulated or administered or how anything. I'm not a deep expert on that, but any therapy, especially an advanced therapy like gene therapy, there are better and worse ways to do it, and just intrinsically, gene therapy is a very powerful thing that we should develop responsibly and we should be open to. We should not do it in irresponsible, dangerous, or other bad ways, but done correctly. I mean, it has of all the therapeutic modes, especially in terms of like the physical, biological ones, it has near maximum potential. There are people who are born with genetic diseases that are really, really destructive. So everything ranging from cases like that to like, there's animals and organisms in nature that have genes that we just do not have. And some of them are super cool, whether it's an additional color receptor in the back of the eye or a different metabolic enzyme. the potential here is amazing. There are better and worse ways to develop this. At Minicircle, we're very dedicated to making it accessible, making it safe, educating the public. So yeah, I would say don't stigmatize stuff with broad strokes. Get informed about the details and keep an open mind, because this is it's a really powerful therapeutic mode.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm glad I said that. I'm glad I asked, and I'm glad you characterize it that way, because I don't want to be closed-minded. I like not knowing, and also I can't help the semantics of it and where my mind goes when I think about stuff like this. So
Yeah,
more research and more education I think is necessary, which I think everybody should be informed about what the heck's going on, what they're signing up for. Cool.
definitely.
Super cool.
Yep.
Okay, let's land this plane. I've got one more question, which is a fill in the blank, and this can be based on really anything. Doesn't have to be specific to Minicircle or the work that you do. And you can elaborate as much or as little as you want. And I've asked this hundreds of times.
Yep.
Everyone would benefit from knowing
Their personal biological data to start
and
with.
if and if you had to choose, okay, I'm going to dig deeper. If you had to choose, 10's not enough, okay, but let's say if you had to choose 10, which 10 would you do?
Oh
Would
my
you choose?
gosh. Yeah, I think about this every day. Okay, so first first of all, whole genome sequencing. Okay, it's like $300. This is in my opinion, this is one of the culminations of like human scientific ambition. It's available for $300, and people are completely unaware of this, or they're like, what am I going to do with all that data? You can figure out what to do with it once you have it. So I would say get whole genome sequencing. That's get whole genome sequencing. Get a DEXA scan, probably get them regularly. Get blood work, like lipid panel, metabolic panel, hormone panel. So that might be like a few. What else is good? Do some of the other blood-based, like glycanage, True Diagnostic, Iolo metabolomics is super cool. A few things like that. Some kind of functional fitness testing, like, grip strength, squat, bench, deadlift, VO2 max. Those are good. Wearables are super accessible for a lot of people. That'll just kind of automatically look at your heart and your sleep and other stuff. What else is good? Logging your diet. If I had a dime for every person I've talked to who's like, yeah, I eat pretty clean, but I'm still 20 pounds overweight, I'm like, write down what you eat for the next week and then show it to me. And I meet with a lot of resistance there. So that can be a useful exercise. Cognitive testing, humanbenchmark.com is free. And it's like some fun memory tests. Those are some great places to start. And then also, I would say some way to score your social and financial health is maybe undervalued in terms of longevity, like avoiding toxic relationships, building positive relationships, and also doing your best to make sure you're financially secure. Those things can trump a lot of like biological things if you don't take care of them. So that would be kind of my 10-ish top things.
Wonderful. I'm going to put that together into a clip because I think that's answers the question for a lot of people, which is, where do I start? Right.
Yeah. To start, I would say like DEXA, blood work. DEXA and blood work is a great place to start. And you're looking at like a few $100. Throw whole genome sequencing in. And I'd say you're off to like a really awesome start.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. Well, Ryan, this has been a super interesting conversation. I might bug you again and say, hey, come on back, because I want to go down different rabbit holes with you. But thank you for joining me today on the OPP.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.